Have you been awestruck? Have you been seized by awe, taken by wonder? Recently? Do you experience awe regularly? If not, why not? Author Elizabeth Lesser has a card stuck on her refrigerator. It shows a woman standing in reverence before an open freezer door, saying, "Amazing, perfect ice cubes again." Elizabeth Lesser then says this: "I realize that we are not put on this earth to stand around open freezers ranting like idiots about ice cubes. But a good question to ask yourself is this: if perfect ice cubes or an evening sky or an old song on the radio has not made your heart flip-flop lately, why not? What is keeping you from feeling the rapture? Indeed, what is keeping us from feeling the rapture of being fully alive and in awe? For the poet Mary Oliver, being awestruck is her usual state of being. Listen to one of her poems. "Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light. It was what I was born for, to look, to listen, to lose myself inside this soft world, to instruct myself over and over in joy and acclamation. Nor am I talking about the exceptional, the fearful, the dreadful, the very extravagant, but of the ordinary, the common, the very drab, the daily presentations. O good scholar, I say to myself, how can you help but grow wise with such teaching as this? The untrimmable light of the world, the ocean's shine, the prayers that are made out of grass." Maybe we don't see a soft world that we can lose ourselves in. Rather, in our experience, the world may feel hard. We might feel that we need to protect ourselves from the hardness of the world, not, in fact, lose ourselves in it. And you don't need me to tell you that we do face hard realities. We face unprecedented global and local challenges, many which are, in fact, already crises upon us. In our environment, in our social fabric, in our economic and political spheres. No, indeed, the world may not seem or feel very soft. We may see the world rather as a mess to avoid, like that impenetrable, junk-filled garage that we keep putting off addressing or cleaning. Now, every now and then, we may experience a shiver of wonder. Every now and then, we might experience a tremor of meaning or of mystery. But it's usually in response to what Mary Oliver called the exceptional, the fearful things, the dreadful things, or the very extravagant things. So we might feel awe at the birth of a child or the grandchild. We may feel a dread wonder as we look at the ferocious power of a hurricane. We might feel awe in the presence of a miraculous life-saving surgery, or wonder at the beauty of a particularly spectacular sunset. Or we might feel awe of the more dreadful kind when we witness the unstoppable march of disease and death when they come. Come for us, come for ones we love. But what about awe in the midst of the ordinary? What about wonder in the midst of the common, the very drab? In our world, such daily doses of awe might seem a luxury, even if they're even believable in the first place. In our hard world, awe may seem like an indulgence, a luxury in a world perceived as harsh and demanding, geared as we are to relentless productivity. There might be, in our lives, very little room for awe in any form, because our lives are filled with so much tension and uncertainty and pessimism. There might not be room for awe because we are filled with skepticism or cynicism, or we may be overwhelmed by the mean-spiritedness that we find ourselves in. And within the daily grind, day in, day out, there might be a malaise of boredom that doesn't just take hold of our kids. I don't know about you, but I hear from time to time, "Mama, I'm so bored." And if we were honest, sometimes, maybe more often than not, we are bored too. Because life can feel flat. It can feel tedious. Day in, day out, the same old thing. And we too can be gripped by a deadly restlessness that has us looking for stimulation wherever we can find it. And so we look compulsively at our phones, our tablets, our TV screens. We pick up our distractions. But what I'm finding as I look into myself and I think about what I was like even 10 years ago, I can say for me at least that our many technologies are not enlivening. They don't give us rest. They don't rejuvenate our souls by and large. In fact, what I find in my life is that many technologies make me more unavailable for wonder, more unavailable for the surprise of awe. Because sometimes our technologies estrange us from genuine social contact, face-to-face engagement. Sometimes it is simply that we are in the throes of distraction and adding to our busyness. And sometimes it is because we are addicted to device and information overload. What I find in myself is that I've become more detached from the awe of existence. And I don't think I'm the only one. As I look around, I wonder if detachment from the awe of being human and being fully alive, that detachment is actually growing. And so I find myself and see around me the grasping for awe substitutes. How can I find a thrill? Or how can I consume something, over-consuming material goods so that I feel alive? I have a card propped up on one of my office bookcases. It shows a little girl on the seashore, and she is looking toward the sand with rapt attention on her face, and her hand is extended in exploration. And that card says on the front, "Never lose your sense of wonder." We need that reminder because our culture is losing our sense of wonder, and it is all too easy for us to lose our sense of wonder. And we need wonder now more than ever. Louise Altman is an intentional communication consultant, and she notes that rekindling awe within ourselves is a key to our resiliency as we navigate the hard realities and problems of our time. She says this: "The weary cynic in us needs hope. The overwhelmed worrier in us needs soothing. And the frustrated, angry, and disappointed parts of ourselves need rest. Allowing more wonder and awe can do all that. Awe and wonder can enable a sense of gratitude, appreciation, joy, peace, and contentment." And she says, wonder and awe can heal because they nourish. We need wonder in our day and age as if our lives depended on it, because in fact our lives do depend on it. Albert Einstein confronts us when he said, "One who can no longer pause to wonder or stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead." The Psalms, our ancient prayer book, reminds us what awe looks like. And the Psalms can rekindle awe in our hearts. I've even thought that the book of Psalms could be renamed. We could call it the Book of Awe, as it contains many forms of wonder. There's amazement in the sheer blessing of daily life. There's astonishment in the face of marvelous acts. And yes, there is terror in the midst of sheer, raw power. In the Psalms, we find reverence even in the midst of hardship and calamity. And our reading this morning, Psalm 65, is particularly beautiful because the psalmist is awestruck. We could call him the psalmist, maybe. Because he's contemplating the wonder of God. I imagine him composing this psalm as he's surrounded in God's glory, maybe some beautiful place. And he's meditating on God's grace and deeds. And awe leaves him silent just for a moment, because awe, when we experience it, often leaves us without words. It's beyond words. And he starts the psalm in this way when he says, God of Zion, to you even silence is praise. And the psalmist senses God listening at the very center of creation. And he says, you listen to prayer, and all living things come to you. For a moment, in awe, it's as if all living things hold their breath. And then for the psalmist, words erupt and flow from his mouth, from his awestruck heart. Awe arises from the seedbed of gratitude. Awe arises from the ground of love, and it takes form as a torrent of ecstatic praise. And so the psalmist sees God and God's marvelousness everywhere he looks, even at the far edges of the earth. The psalmist sings of God's forgiveness. He sings of a sense of closeness to God that brings happiness. He praises the goodness of worship. Praise lifts up God's holiness and righteousness, which is God's perfect love expressed toward everything. As the psalmist continues, awe shines light on the security and strength that is found in God. He mentions the calm and the rest given by God, even in the midst of the forces of nature and nations. In awe, even morning and evening sing for joy. The psalmist finds himself trembling as he considers God's visitation throughout the earth. And as he thinks about God's presence everywhere, he can't help but think of God's abundance everywhere. That everywhere there is God's vitality. He says even the desert pastures drip with it. The psalmist witnesses drenching water, rich food. The hills are dressed, the meadowlands are covered, the valleys are decked, all with pure joy. For when one is awestruck, everything shouts for joy. The thing about awe is that it can't be manufactured. We can't make it ourselves. Awe comes upon us by surprise. It captures us. No matter how hard we try, we cannot capture awe on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, or Facebook. Awe comes upon us by surprise. It's pure. Awe, when you think about it, is untouched by greed. In the moment of awe, we are not thinking about how can I hold on to this? How can I keep this? That comes later. But in that pure moment of awe, It is untouched by our greed. It is untouched by lust. It is untouched by covenantness. And awe is fleeting. We would like to hold on to it. We want it to last forever, but it is fleeting. And it is achingly exquisite. Awe breaks us open. Awe explodes our self-protective shells that we put around us. When awe comes upon us, it exposes our raw and tender hearts. Sometimes it brings us to the gift of tears. Awe breaks us open to God, to each other, to all of creation. And awe is amazing because we are small. We get a sense of our smallness when we experience awe, and yet at the same time, we feel part of a greatness beyond ourselves. Awe, therefore, awakens us to belonging. It's not alienating to feel small. We actually feel at one with all things. And the thing about awe is that it measures our capacity for aliveness. And being awestruck is the fire that fuels our own giving. Awe activates not only our praise, but when we are taken by awe, we want to express ourselves in our prayers. We want to express ourselves through our gifts, our service, and our presence. Awe does indeed break us open. That is why we fear it and we yearn for it at the same time. The great spiritual teachers say, "Behold the wonders as they occur around you." And they occur around us all the time. In the common, in the drab, in the everyday, in the ordinary. If we would but look and listen with a psalmist's heart, with a poet's spirit. In our hurting world, in our fragmented lives, awe may yet heal us and return us to wholeness. For awe to reanimate our dry bones and our dim spirits, we need to only practice being open. We only need to practice being available and present. As Mary Oliver advises us, pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. Mary Oliver also points us to the mystery that awe can accompany us all the way to the end. When we are awestruck, we do not fear death. Mary Oliver writes, "When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn," she says, "I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like in that cottage of darkness? When it is over, I want to say, all my life, I was the bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms." And then we die as we have lived, awestruck. And we are fully available for the next awesome surprise that God has in store for us. New life. And we will be ready to praise. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.